Ladies and gentlemen, and sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Deck Chicago, one of the couple 2 or 3 best podcasts around. So grab yourself a nice cold one and a bowl of sausage, park your keister in your French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Deck Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your Chicago Bears post-game episode that we're going to do every week. And before we get started, I need to take a deep breath. Take one with me. And I guess let's first take a quick second to talk about our sponsor. Is the Rockford Ice Hogs. Hockey comes back to the BMO Saturday, October 11th. For game information and tickets, go to icehogs.com. So the Bears defense from week 1 to week 2 to week 3 looked like they were progressing. They were starting to figure things out, starting to play a little better, starting to get some pressure, starting to have some decent defensive back play. And it seems like they take 1 step forward and 2 steps back. This was a really rough game. I had to check the stats to see if Aaron Rodgers ever had a pass that hit the ground. So the wheels just basically came off the train, and this was a rough game to have at home. So 2 home games, 2 losses. Not a good way to start the season. So I guess we'll start with some of the questions that I asked in the last episode. The pregame one is for the Bears offense. Can Marshall have a bounce-back game, or will the Pack use the same technique of doubling Marshall? So that was one of the questions from the Bears offense. The answer was Marshall did not have a bounce-back game. 2 catches, 19 yards. Did have a touchdown, and that was a 13-yard reception. But other than that, for the rest of the game, 1 reception, 6 yards, and he was targeted on a play where apparently he ran the wrong route, caused an interception. So not a good game for Brandon Marshall. That ankle must really be bothering him. And so that's just a nightmare for the Bears. Another question I had for the Bears offense was, can they get the ground game going? And that was actually a resounding yes. Matt Forte had 122 yards on the ground. Kadeem Carey had 72. Jay Cutler had 29. And Alshon Jeffrey had 12 yards and a touchdown rushing. So they were able to run really well against Green Bay Packers. And I thought that was something that was really good. I mean, granted, the Packers have a terrible run defense, but the Bears were able to really pound the ball on them. And then the questions I had for the Packers defense, if the Bears commit to the run, can the Packers stop them? And that was a yes and no. They gave up a lot of yards on the ground to the Bears, but whenever they needed to come up with a big stop, they seemed to come up with a big one, and just enough of them to be able to throw off the Bears' rhythm on their offense and allow, 1 stop was basically all the Packers needed because they just kept putting points on the board. The next one was, can they take Brandon Marshall away? And that was a resounding yes. They took Brandon Marshall out of the game. Whether it was the injury, whether it was their coverage, whatever it was, Brandon Marshall didn't have a good game. The questions I had for the Bears defense. Can the Bears get to Aaron Rodgers consistently applying pressure? That was a no. That was an absolute flat-out no. No, there was no sacks other than, I believe they got credited for 1 sack that was where they rushed him on the outside and made a tackle before the line of scrimmage, which I guess still technically is a sack, but they didn't collapse the pocket and cause a sack. And they only had a few quarterback hurries, but for the most part, Aaron Rodgers had all the time in the world to throw, and that was just infuriating. You have Jared Allen, who couldn't play because of the pneumonia, and he lost 15 pounds this week, so he wasn't going to be able to play. And Willie Young has looked phenomenal so far, but he just looked really pedestrian, which is surprising considering how well he's played and how poor the Packers' offensive line has played. So that was a really rough thing to watch. And can they contain Randall Cobb and Jordy Nelson with their injury-depleted secondary? That was no. They could not. Not at all. Those guys were wide open all day long. And the question for the Packers offense, can the Packers offensive line keep Willie Young and Jared Allen from going gangbusters on Rodgers? Well, illness kept Jared Allen off of the stat sheet, and Willie Young just got blocked up all day long. Nothing else to say, so that was a yes. And can Eddie Lacy get it going against a Bears defense that struggles against the run? I mean, he put up 48 yards rushing, which is not that good, but he got enough. He was able to get yards when they needed him to get yards. So they were 48 important yards. So let's just take a look at this game and where things went wrong. Opening drive, things looked great. Bears marched down the field, scored a touchdown. But then they ran this weak zone against the Packers, and they weren't able to get any pressure on Aaron Rodgers to cause him to make any mistakes. And that's the thing, is they look at the blueprints. Is Seattle got pressure on Aaron Rodgers, caused him to make mistakes. Were physical with Jordy Nelson, double teamed him, took him away. He throws to Jordy Nelson 50% of the time. So take him away, put some pressure on, and when the first places he's going to look is the guy that's double teamed. And if he's not going to be able to find the guy he's looking for, and you put pressure on him, he's not going to be able to make that second option because he just doesn't have time. And that's the same thing that the Jets did on the first half against the Packers. And that's the same thing the Lions did last week against the Packers. Put pressure on Aaron Rodgers and take away Jordy Nelson. That's what the Jets' game plan was against the Bears, and almost worked. It's apply pressure to Jay Cutler and take away his number one target, Brandon Marshall. And the Bears couldn't apply the pressure. They weren't sending any kind of exotic blitzes in there to try to get to him. And they were running a zone where Jordy Nelson just ran to the spots that were wide open all day long. It was infuriating. This loss, granted the players have to play, but the game plan on the defensive side of the ball was atrocious. And Mel Tucker just had a poor game plan. And this has got to be on Mark Trestman too, because A, he is the captain of this ship, and B, he's got to be more involved in this defense. He can't just be a glorified offensive coordinator, just like Lovey was the glorified defensive coordinator that had the title of head coach. You can't do that. You can't. This is the NFL. You need to be involved in every phase. Then the one touchdown where they called the penalty on John Bostic, the holding on the field goal, which was I'll get to that in a second. Then Mel Tucker had called a defense where they had a one-on-one with Randall Cobb with Chris Conte covering him. What in the world are you thinking? Chris Conte is terrible. He's absolutely dreadful. He's a terrible safety. Terrible. And he has no business covering Randall Cobb. And Randall Cobb did one shiver move and left him in the dust, wide open in the end zone. I had to watch that play again just because I couldn't believe how bad a person could have gotten burned. I'm like, no, he must have got picked out somehow. Nope, no pick, no stunt, no slip, no fall, nothing. He just got juked out of his shorts at the line of scrimmage and left in the dust by Randall Cobb. This was a humiliating loss for the Bears. This wasn't just a loss. The Packers went to Chicago and took the Bears to the woodshed. They did everything they wanted to do on offense, and on defense, they were able to do enough. And by the second half, they got 2 big interceptions, almost a third. They got pressure to Cutler finally, and they were able to make a few stops, and the ball just kept rolling downhill. And then it doesn't help that the referees were making atrocious calls. I mean, they made the one bad call where they called the illegal hands to the face on Peppers. That was the only bad call that they had on the Packers' part. But on the Bears, they had the one Jordy Nelson touchdown where he was covered by Kyle Fuller. Jordy Nelson completely pushed off. Not only pushed off, but he pushed off on Kyle Fuller's face. So that should have been pass interference, illegal hands to the face. Should have been 2 penalties right on that same one, but instead they left it go and threw a touchdown. The holding call on the field goal. What was that? Holding? Are you kidding me? What? This was bad officiating. And I mean, I sound like a sore loser, but it's just frustrating. Is if your team is gonna get their butts whooped, let it happen on the field. Don't let the referees come in there and exacerbate it. It's just frustrating. What else even about this game? The defensive backs. I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch it. Is how much of it was poor play on the defensive backs, and how much of it was just bad play calling, and putting that defense in poor positions. You have a middle linebacker who's been all right against the run, but he out in pass coverage, he looks like young Forrest Gump running with those magic shoes that held his knees together, couldn't run, and that's what he looks like out there. And then, Kyle Fuller, he showed that he was a rookie today. He had he got pushed off on in the pass where the Jordy Nelson caught it in the end zone, but then he got faked out of his shorts by Randall Cobb, who again was open on a zone play where he went to the soft spot and caught it. It's amazing. This was an offense. The Packers' offense was reeling. Fans were upset. Just everybody was writing them off, and the Bears coaching staff had film to show, all right, well, this is what you got to do. This is the blueprints to stop this offense. The Jets did it for a half. The Lions did it for a whole game. Seahawks did it for a whole game. This is the formula to beat the Packers. Is you physically beat up their wide receivers at the line of scrimmage, double cover Jordy Nelson, and get pressure on Aaron Rodgers. And that whole offense disintegrates, and the Bears didn't do that. They thought that they were going to play some terrible zone defense that, it was bad. The only times that they did seem to have decent plays were when they stacked the box and they were able to stop run plays, and the times that they did play man press coverage. So it was just a bad game plan. And then the offensive play calling was great in the first half. They were established that run. It made for the pass plays to be open. Martellus Bennett was open all day. 134 yards receiving on 9 catches. That was great. But then the second half, I think things really started to fall apart for the Bears when they didn't get that call of a touchdown to end the first half. There wasn't very good play calling per se on that drive. Is the first run play, that was great because nobody was expecting it, but to follow it up with another run play right up the middle, that was bad because you had to waste another timeout or took seconds off of the clock. What you needed to do if you were going to run is run to the outside so you could at least step out of bounds. But I felt like they should have, that first run play was great, but then you follow that up with passes so you can either get to the outside or get to the middle and take a timeout. but instead you ran 2 yards on that second play because they were ready for it. And so whatever. But the fact that they didn't get the touchdown, even though I keep looking at it, and I can't see how there wasn't a touchdown, how that ball didn't break the plane. But that was the beginning of the end for the Bears. Had they got that, this might have been a different game. But ifs and buts are candy and nuts. It'd be Christmas every day. But anyways, so that starts the snowball effect of rolling downhill. Going into the second half, what do you have? You have Aaron Rodgers coming out again and marching right down the field. And this defense needed to get the stops. And finally, when the Bears aren't able to start to keep score, to keep up with the Packers' passing attack, then what you do is you find yourself falling behind and knowing you have to pass to catch up, and then the Packers' defense just taking advantage of that. So in the second half, I just felt that the play calling wasn't up to par on the offensive level. They were giving up on the run too much, and they weren't taking advantage of the plays that were successful in the first half. They let Brandon Marshall get taken out. They tried to do too many cute things. They had the ability to just keep smashing the Packers in the face and run the ball on them and take that time off the clock. And it just seems that they weren't able to keep that momentum going. And then once they had a few drives where they stalled and couldn't score, Packers did come out and score. And that just put them deep in a hole. And what happens when you're in a hole is so it's just this is a rough game for the Bears all around. I don't even know how else to put it. And we could start with breaking down defensive line. They weren't exceptional against the run, couldn't apply any pressure on the pass. Grading them out, I give them a C-, D+. They didn't need what they needed to do. The linebackers, they were invisible today. Other than they had the holding penalty, Bostic had the holding penalty, and DJ Williams had the late hit. Other than that, they were just invisible. Give them D-. The defensive backs, the safeties were horrible. Cornerbacks were not good. F. Oh, and Mel Tucker's play calling. F. The defense flat out was bad. Let's go with the Bears' offensive line. I'm going to go ahead and give them an A-. Other than a few plays at the end of the game, they looked very good, being able to run block, being able to pass block. They looked good. You didn't hear Clay Matthews' name much, and you didn't hear Julius Pepper's name at all. And that was really good on their part. Running backs, Matt Forte did great. I give Matt Forte an A- as well. Kadeem Carey, give him B+. They both looked very good. Quarterback, I got to give a C+. Cutler had some good stats. I mean, he completed 22 passes for 256 yards and 2 touchdowns. But the interceptions just were costly. The one, I don't know if that's his fault. The second one where it was supposed to go to Brandon Marshall, and I don't know if Marshall ran the wrong play or if Jay was expecting him to run something different, and it was Cutler's misunderstanding where the route was supposed to go. Either way, that one I'm not going to put on him until I know better whose responsibility that was. The other one that got deflected, that one was a bad pass. He tried to whip one in there, and he threw it too close to the corner. Cornerback tips it, gets intercepted, and that's that. There you go. And that wasn't the game, but that was very costly. And you just can't do that. And he almost had a third pick too. So, I'm going to give him a C+. The receivers, Jeffrey, I'm going to give a B too. He had some drops, but he also had some nice plays. Brandon Marshall, I'm going to give a D. He had the touchdown, but that's about it. Martellus Bennett, A+++. Looked great out there. So it was this loss is going to be on Brandon Marshall, Jay Cutler, and the Bears defense. Let's grade out Mark Trestman's play calling. I'm going to go C+. First half was great. Mixed up the run, mixed up the pass, looked good. The second half got away from what their bread and butter was. You can't tell me that the Packers made such good adjustments at halftime that they were able to do just completely anything they wanted. So this wasn't about halftime adjustments. This is about your game plan and then not being able to execute it in the second half. And then officiating, I'm giving them an F because there was such atrocious play calling. But the Bears do have talent on defense. The Ratliff didn't play and Allen didn't play, but they've got Willie Young looks very good. You paid big bucks to Lamar Houston, and you've got 2 rookie interior linemen who have played well enough. You have Lance Briggs, perennial Pro Bowl linebacker. You've got a first-round rookie cornerback who is highly touted. You've got another Pro Bowl cornerback. You can't have... This isn't like it's a team with no talent at all. This just makes me think that this is really bad scheming, and I wonder if they completely overhauled this defensive coaching staff, how things would be different. What can they do differently to be able to win ball games? You don't have to completely shut them down. This doesn't have to be the 85 Bears defense. This doesn't have to be last year's Seattle's defense. This doesn't have to be the Pittsburgh Steel Curtain. It doesn't have to be one of those defenses. It just has to be able to stop Aaron Rodgers a couple of times. This has to be a defense that just takes some turnovers, gets a sack every now and then. That makes the offensive game plan stop and have to turn it over to the high-powered Bears offense. So, but they're not doing that. So you just wonder what it is about this defense that just can't gel. And I'm starting to think that it's bad coaching, bad defensive play calling, and that if this had another coaching regime in there for the defensive side, that this would be a much better Bears team. So what can you do after 4 weeks? Not much you can do. But if you're Mark Trestman and you want to stay head coach of this football team, you need to do something. You need to start going to those defensive meetings. You need to start being involved in that game plan. You need to start helping figure out how to stop another team. Because this isn't going to get any easier. You still have a rough schedule. You've got to play Green Bay again. This is not how you win NFL games. And so I don't even know what else to say. As I said, deep breaths, Goose Fraba. It's hard. Intellectually, I know this is just one game and that they can bounce back from one game. It's just one game. But deep down, it's hard to swallow because I know that this is indicative of how they're going to play going forward. This is a team that has some real talent, but they've got some fatal flaws as well. They don't have that kill switch on offense that they need. And if you're going to be a team that's offense-centric, you need to have that kill switch, and you need to be able to just put 40 points on the board if necessary. You can't march up and down the field and then only put up 17 points. You just can't do that. And on defense, you need to find some sort of identity and be able to figure out how it is that you're going to play and stop a team enough for your offense to put up points on the board. And there was absolutely no punts in this game. Not a single one. That's only the second time in the history of the NFL that has happened. Second time in the history of the NFL. It's a lot of games that are played for, between then and now where there's been no punts. That just shows it was absolute dreadful defense. And the Packers don't get a bye on their defense either. but at least they made enough plays to be able to get the ball for their offense. And that's what the Bears need to figure out how to do is how do you get those timely interceptions? How do you get that timely sack? How do you make the timely run stop? How do you cause the timely incomplete pass? Those are the things that the Bears defense have to figure out. They're not going to go out there and stymie a team and pitch a no-hitter in a shutout game. Like you can't do that with this Bears team. But you can at least go out there and bend but don't break and be able to come up with just enough stops to give your offense a chance and more possessions than they have to score. That's what you need to do. And as of right now, they did it last week, but they couldn't do it. They couldn't do it this week. Couldn't do it against Buffalo. So this is going to be a long season if that defense can't start gelling. Maybe Jared Allen coming back next week can have an effect on them. Maybe getting Jay Ratliff back will help them. I don't know, but this team needs some sort of veteran leadership, and they need some better coaching, and that comes from Mark Trestman down. So that's about all I have to say about this. I was just kind of skimming over some of the things that were said online, and it seems that everybody hates Jay Cutler, and blaming this all on him. But he didn't allow them to have 38 points up. The refs were bad, and they gave a lot of momentum to the Packers when they were stopped, and that was that was bad. But you can't hang the whole thing on them, and it seems that that's basically where they're going with their comments is hating Jay Cutler and hating the refs, and that's you can't blame either one of those for this loss. This was a coaching loss. This was poor planning because you had a blueprint to how to win. This was not being able to execute a game plan, not being able to get stops on third down, not being able to stop wide receivers from being wide open, not getting pressure on the quarterback. That's what this was about. So I guess that's about it for this episode. We're going to do another one, in the next few days. We'll break down the next game for the Bears. We'll talk season wrap-ups for the White Sox and the Cubs. Season starts for the Bulls and the Blackhawks. So we'll have a little bit more on that. And also, probably Wednesday, we'll have the film breakdown of what went wrong and what went right on some of the plays. So I'll have actual photographs stills from the game. So until next time, check us out at SwerskiSports.com. That's SWERSKI sports.com, or at Swerski Sports on Twitter, Facebook.com/SwerskiSports. And if you are a listener via iTunes, make sure to leave a rating on there. If we get 5-star ratings, that makes us go up in the search engines, which makes more people hear us, which means we can do more cool things with getting guests and such. So that's about wraps it up. Thanks for listening, and until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like Remember, New Yorkers, smoking crack is not legal on planes.
Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears!
Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.